So in case you don't know what you stumbled into today, this is just a preview of a life group that starts this week. At the very bottom of your handout are all the details about the life group itself. If you'll go down there and look at me, or look at it, it says Thursday night, 6:30, September 16th, at the church office. And if you look at, yes sir?
How long is the seminar?
Like each night, or how many weeks?
It starts at 6:30 and...
Runs about an hour and a half.
Okay, yes,
So,
class at 8 o'clock.
yeah, so you could slip out a little early and be fine. And it's about 9 weeks long. It used to be 12 weeks long, but Financial Peace folks kind of tightened it up a little bit and puts a lot of stuff online. There is a price for the kit, the Financial Peace kit. You'll see that it's $129.99. The church does pay half of that for you. So it would be $65 for you. You do not have to have the kit to do the life group. You can come sit and get all the information without the kit. The only thing you miss out on when you don't do the kit is the actual materials. But also there's an online tool called Every Dollar that is actually a tool that helps you manage your budget. I actually have one for the church budget and one for my personal budget. I'm a big believer in it. It comes in that price. And it's a 1-year membership that's included. So just something to know as you're considering whether you want to do the kit or not. The reason why I have such a passion for Financial Peace, I'll do a real quick story about myself. Grew up in a middle-income household, not a lot of money, check-to-check kind of situation. Mom and Dad both worked, but it just took a lot of money to survive. And so when I was growing up, I didn't really get any knowledge from my parents on managing money, honestly. What I mainly saw was a lot of dysfunction. I can remember every Christmas we would ask for certain things in our household, and we never got what we asked for, but we got other stuff. And I found out later the reason why we didn't get what we asked for is because she only had a Montgomery Ward credit card. So she got the closest thing to whatever we asked for from Montgomery Ward, because she lived off of that credit. This was before Visa and MasterCard were a big deal. It was mainly store credit cards. So years later, we figured out, oh, so that's why we got the not real IZOD, but the whatever they called the ones at Montgomery Ward or whatever. So that was kind of my upbringing. So when I moved out of my house into my first apartment, I carried that same pattern into my life. I remember the first credit card I ever got was a Texaco credit card for the gas station, and I would actually go by the gas station, fill up my truck, and then I would buy groceries at the Texaco station using my Texaco card. So, and you know what happens at a Texaco station. How much more of a price do you pay there than you do at a grocery store for a bag of chips? A lot. So I started that habit. I went into Dee's Photo in downtown Shreveport when they were open down there, and there was this camera set that I wanted. And I told the guy behind the counter, I said, I can't afford that. He goes, oh, yes, you can. There's a Canon credit card. And if you can just buy it with this credit card and pay it out in time. So I did it. And God knows what I paid for that camera gear by the time I paid that thing off. But I made them little monthly payments, so I created the same lifestyle my parents had, living on credit. Fast forward the story, I'm sitting in a Sunday school class, and a buddy of mine actually brings to Sunday school the second sheet in your handout, if you'll flip to it. I had never heard of it before, and basically it's just a little exercise you go through to determine how much of your money do you spend in a given category of your life. You know, from charitable gifts to debts to food, car notes, etc. So I kind of folded that sheet up and stuck it in my Bible. Went home privately, not even with my wife, and I added up where we spent our money, and we were living on 115% of our income. You're like, how's that possible? Credit. We were actually spending 115% of what we made every month. I was like, this is not going to work. And we looked like we had it going on. We had just built a house. We had 2 vehicles with a car note. We were the American couple that has succeeded, and we were drowning in debt. So when I saw that sheet, I was like, man, something's got to change. And then I moved to Texas and went to work for another church for 2 or 3 years, and they asked me, because I was the business manager at the church, hey, you should lead Financial Peace. You're the business manager. I had never even heard of financial peace. I said, sure, I'll lead it. It was 12 weeks at the time. It was VHS tapes in a tape player. And I stuck it in the tape player, and I literally watched it for the first time with my first set of students. And I got so into the lesson, I forgot I was a facilitator. Because I'm like, this stuff's amazing. I've never heard this stuff. Because again, I didn't grow up learning any of this. So I went through that 12-week class, and basically that started my journey with financial peace. And I'm a big believer in it. So on this little front sheet that I gave you on the top sheet, it's just a very, very quick summation of what I started learning whenever I actually went through financial peace. And the number one thing I learned was, number one, spending. You have to identify where does the money go. Now, I know that sounds very basic, but what most of us don't want to do is that part of the process. We really don't want to deal with where the money's going. Because what happens when you do is you have to deal with the reality of what you've discovered. So when my wife and I sat down for the first time and we actually looked at that second sheet that I showed you, because I eventually had to show her the sheet. And I was like, do you realize, honey, that we're spending, I think they allow 10 to 15% for car expenses. At that time, we were spending 40% of our money just on what we drove. And she was like, really? And then you just do it category by category. And that's the very, very first step. So you might think, well, what do you do after you discover where all your money goes? The really hard part, make changes. And I can remember wrestling with, but I can't get rid of that. We have to have a good family car. You rationalize all these decisions. And I can remember going from us having 2 brand new vehicles that were financed to the hilt to buying a $6,000 Honda minivan for our family to ride in. And how much of an adjustment that was for me, because I wasn't used to driving old stuff. I like new stuff. But I had somebody's old stuff, but it didn't have a car note. Isn't that amazing? And then that was just kind of how the journey started. The second thing on the top 3 issues you have to wrestle with is debt. How much debt is okay? If you listen to Dave Ramsey at all, he'll say 0 is okay. That's how much he wants you to have. That's tough. That's hard to do. So as a family, you have to decide, what can we really borrow money to buy? The most popular one is a house. I can remember when we built our house in Bossier. We were living in Shreveport, moved to Bossier. We went to a local bank. We sat down with a lender. We had this house drawn up, these plans drawn up, and the lender looked at everything and he said, I can't make that loan for you. I was like, what? Your debt to income ratio is too out of whack. You have too much other debt. I'm not going to loan you the money. Now, looking back, he was trying to do me a favor. What do you think I did? Found another bank. I said, oh, really? Okay. I stormed out of there. I can't believe this. I went and found a bank that would lend me the money. But the first banker was on the right track because he looked at us as a young couple and said, you're going to be just house poor. He called it exactly right. I remember being a young couple and we had so much house and so much cars that we had no other life. We couldn't go out. We couldn't go on vacation. We couldn't go to a restaurant just to make the notes. And for what? But that's what we thought you were supposed to do. So how much debt is okay? And then the third thing that you're going to wrestle with is the blame game. Now, if you're by yourself, you're single, there's only one person to blame. And that's if you're the only one spending your money. But in most situations, we tend to blame the other person. Well, he's a big spender. When he goes out, it's a big item. It's going to be a boat, a car, whatever. And then what does the guy say? Well, you nickel and dime us to death. Every time you go to Target, it's $100. And the fight starts at that point in time. So you got to wrestle with the blame game and own it. So what steps can you take? Real quick on the sheet. Scripture, Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The biggest single fundamental thing you got to wrestle with is why do you want to buy and own what you have? I can't answer that question for you. But if it is your treasure and that is what your heart is, that's going to be the first step in the process, which leads to admitting there is a problem. First step to any recovery, financial recovery, drug addiction, alcoholism, whatever you're wrestling with, they'll tell you, you have to admit there's an issue. If you go to that little second sheet I just showed you and you start doing the numbers and you live on more than 100% of your income, or if any of these categories are above the threshold they recommend, that's a problem. And you have to go, okay, I have to make changes. I have to either downsize my house, drive less vehicle, eat out less, travel less, whatever the situation may be. Number two, you got to track your expenses. Now, this little sheet that I gave you, I would recommend you make photocopies of it, because hopefully this is going to be an exercise that continues month after month. You're going to have a starting spot. You're going to write all these numbers down, and then there's going to be another time next month where you look at it again. And I hope that down the road you actually get to fill one of these out and you feel good about what you see on there. So start tracking those expenses. Number three, pre-plan your spending. In other words, create a true budget. Now, this is why I say a true budget. At least for me and most people I see, budgeting to them is looking back at where the money went. So they get to the end of the month and they go, uh-oh, bills are due. How much is left over? And they call that a budget. No. Pre-plan your spending. And this is where every dollar is a huge deal, that software that I mentioned. You literally put in this software, or you can do it on paper without a computer, how much do you want to spend in a given category? So your house note is your house note, for example, or your apartment rent or whatever. But when you get into dining out, grocery purchasing, recreation, entertainment, you pick an amount of money you're going to put in that category. And in theory, you do not exceed that amount for that month. Well, the only way you're going to really do that is if you're watching that in real time. What most of us do is we live life, we get to the end of the month, we go, whoo, we blew that. Good night, we ate $500 in restaurants this month. Well, guess what? That $500 is gone. But if you put $200 in that budget and you get to halfway through the month and you've spent $190, guess what happens the second half of the month? It's PB&J. That's if you're really serious about making a change. So pre-plan that spending, create that true budget. And I hate to keep harping on every dollar, but the beauty of every dollar in that software is it has a color code system in the category that when you get into the Jeopardy spot, it turns red. I love it. So when you open up that software and you look and it's like dining out, all of a sudden it flips to red and says, you've overspent. And it's in real time because it's actually taking the data from your bank account and putting it into the software. Love it. Save for emergencies, number 4. Initial goal, $1,000. Most of us, when we're in financial trouble, it seems like more problems come your way. It's the strangest thing. But the tighter you are on money, the more crisis you have. Now, that's probably not really true, but it feels that way because every time something breaks, it's a big deal. I can remember being a young person and struggling with money, and anytime there was anything that was out of the ordinary, there was panic. Car wouldn't start. Got to have a car battery. That's $150. Where's that going to come from? Credit card. Done. Kids got to have school clothes. They grew over the summer. How'd that happen? Credit card. Okay, so, and you solve all these crises with debt. Guess what happens to the debt? It grows. And guess what happens when the debt grows and the crisis builds? The next time you have a crisis, you're putting more and more, and then sooner or later you either tap out the credit card and you're done, or you get another one. Because they're always eager to give you another one. I don't know if you know that or not, but they're readily available. I usually bring it as an example, but my oldest daughter went to BIPSI. She was 14 years old when she went because she was taking a dual enrollment course with Airline High School. She got a credit card offer in the mail from BIPSI at 14 years of age with her name on it, already on the little sheet. Just peel it off, call a number, and it's yours. That's how early it starts. Now, obviously, in my household, she did not get that. I said, this is going to be a prop. You are not even going to get a chance to hold it. You know, and she thanks me to this day for that. So, save for emergencies. $1,000 is your initial goal. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it helps because it's that $150 battery. It's the school clothes that you didn't plan on. It's the unexpected medical expense. Save that $1,000. And then as you get further and further along in your goals, you'll see that that number grows as a percentage of your budget. And then lastly, number 5, start paying off debts. Attack the smallest balance first. Now you'll hear people argue and say, no, take the highest interest rate, or the reason why Dave talks about going smallest balance first is he wants you to have a win. So let's say you have a little credit card, maybe it's a department store card and you got $500 on there. You pay it off, close it out, you feel like you're doing something. If you tackle the biggest interest rate and it's your largest balance, you can work on it forever and you feel like nothing's happening. So take that smallest debt, pay it off, and then whatever that amount of payment you were making on that smallest one, roll it into your next biggest one, make more payments, and you get the idea. We call it the debt snowball. And that snowball starts building, and I'm gonna tell you, there's nothing more exciting than watching those debts go away. When you get to that budget in that month and you go, I don't have that bill anymore. We have $50 more. We have $70 more, whatever the case may be. In Proverbs 22:7, it says, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is a servant to the lender. I actually had another financial course that I took way before Dave Ramsey years ago called Crown Financial. It's been around forever, and they were big on this scripture. And I never really understood it until I got older, and I realized that when you owe money to somebody or an organization, they kind of have you. And here's how I really connected with it. Just imagine if you personally borrowed money from a friend. What happens when you do that? How do you feel while you owe that person that money? It's like, man, I got to make that right. I mean, I got to make the, yeah. A lot of times you do. A lot of times you avoid them, especially if you can't make the payment. Yeah, and there's a tension that comes from that. Well, this scripture is basically saying that the financial institution has you at that moment. A couple of our vehicles at the house are paid for, and I go down the road and I'm thinking, nobody can come get this car. I mean, I find myself thinking that as I drive it. If I lost my job today, if everything went, I have a car. Nobody's got this one. That's just a little feeling of how it feels when you own stuff outright and you're not making payments and somebody actually has something over you. There's some websites mentioned. Debt Proof Living is a lady that does a great job of teaching you how to live debt-free. Joe Sangle is another kind of financial guru, and of course, DaveRamsey.com. Y'all know who he is. Now, last page. Again, this is just a teaser for the life group. These are what he calls baby steps. And these are the things that you're going to learn in Financial Peace over that 9 weeks. First baby step, I already kind of touched on it. Save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. So that's the first goal he's going to set in the class. Now, and he does a good job of explaining how to do that, a garage sale, sell something of value, whatever the case may be. But if you have that $1,000, you don't have to keep having a crisis every time something happens. Baby step number 2. Now, this is a big baby step. I really call this a giant step. Pay off all debt except your house. The reason I say that is because there's 7 steps here. Step number 1, for most people, you can get that done in a few months. You can come up with $1,000. Step number 2, the average family or individual, it takes 3 to 5 years to finish that baby step. I just want to encourage you with that because you can get discouraged pretty quick if you're thinking, baby step 2, I've been working on it for 4 years. So baby step can be kind of fooling there, but he wants you to pay off all those debts. Then once you get those debts paid off, baby step 3, save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. Can you imagine how good it would feel to have 6 months of what it takes to live sitting in the bank? How much comfort and peace would that give to you that if you got sick and missed some work, some kind of crisis sets in? That's what he wants for you, is to have that 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting back. Then baby step 4, investing 15% of your income into your retirement. Now, some of you already have that going on just because of your company or how your income is structured. So if it is, you've got a baby step ahead. But if you don't, that's where you got to be. Number 5, save for your kids' college fund. My youngest daughter sitting in the back of the room. There was no college fund in this household. Amen? That's right. That's why we went to Bipsy. Yeah.
Debt-free.
Debt-free. That's true. Paid for it as we went, so that was good. Pay off your home early is step 6. And then finally, step 7, build wealth and give. And I love what Dave says on that last one. Yeah, most people think that financial peace is about getting to a place to where you can live how you want to live. And one of his sayings is live like nobody lives so you can live like nobody lives. It sounds repetitive, but he's saying if you live like nobody lives now, which means within a budget, making good decisions, there'll come a day to where you get to live like nobody lives because you will have good financial wealth. But then he does a little twist as you go through financial peace, and he says, live like nobody lives so you can give like nobody gives. Now that is a cool feeling. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to meet a need for somebody. Because you have margin in your own life, you're able to do that. That is a great feeling. When you can respond to God, when God points out a neighbor to you that you know is struggling, and you're like, I can actually help. When we were a young couple, we couldn't help. We were the neighbor that somebody should have helped because we were drowning, but it was our own choices. But now when you get financial freedom, you're like, I get to respond to this. I have the margin to go help somebody else out. That's kind of the ultimate goal of financial peace, is live with peace yourself, but to be able to give like nobody gives. Does that help you guys? Any questions that I can answer for you about the life group or kind of what we hope to accomplish in the sessions coming up? Anything at all? Just throw your hand up. Yes, ma'am.
Do they have any kind of a figure per se for your children's college fund?
There are percentages when you get into that step of the deal. It all depends on where they plan to go to school. He's big on staying in state and avoiding the Ivy League and the big colleges, unless you just have a career and the finances to fund that. Generally, the belief is that you're wasting your money, unless it's a highly specialized something you're doing. So he's big on stay in state. He's big on making sure that your housing situation is the most economical while you're in school. So there's a whole lesson on that. And then based on where you think your child's going to go, and think, if you're young, you have no idea where your kid's going to go. But his point is at least you'll have something so that when they get to that phase of their life, and again, Ashley's here, and we didn't have that option, to where here's some money to help you get through school. But yes, they do try to help you figure that out mathematically. Good question. Anybody else? Yes?
When my son was at Tech in his freshman year, he took a personal finance class, and Dave Ramsey and his daughter wrote a book.
Yes.
And by the time Seth graduated school, he already had the 1,000 in the bank.
That's
Just
awesome.
from his little job.
That's awesome.
And I believe he still tries to live that way today, but he's a newlywed, so
Hey, it's tough.
you never know.
But at least the knowledge is there. And I tell people all the time, I don't know that I would have done everything different as a young couple with that knowledge, but I would have liked to have the chance. I wish somebody would have taken the time. So my oldest daughter is married now, and one of their wedding gifts was Financial Peace University. I gave it to them. Now, did they watch it or listen to it? I don't know. But at least they had the opportunity to listen to it. My youngest daughter's back here going, yeah, Dad, I live in your house. I don't need the kid. I hear it every day. You know, so, but yes, I wish I would have had the opportunity to at least know. And it's shocking to me how little we know about managing money. It really is, because we make our decisions based on culture. And culture wants you to spend your money. So when you're watching TV or you're on social media, you're driving down the road, the digital billboard, it's all about come buy our stuff. Because they're marketing. That's what they're supposed to do. It's not their fault. People get mad all the time at marketers. I'm like, they're doing what they're supposed to do, and they're really good at it. They make that four-wheel drive truck look good on that digital billboard. We have to have enough sense to go, that's not a good decision for me. That's on us, but having that knowledge helps. Any other good questions? These are all good. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have to be in this life group in order so that they can address
Yeah, you have to actually do it through the church. So what happens is when you come to the life group that night or whatever, we've already pre-purchased the kits. And it's really a digital signature now. It's what you're paying for. Is you get a login and everything's given to you. What's that? Yeah. But if you go online and do it yourself, you're going to pay $129.99 because Dave Ramsey doesn't give the discount the church does.
Yes, sir. And the only reason why I asked is because my son has football practice.
On that night. Yeah. But we can work it out where if you want to do it online, like if you can't come to the class, we'll give you the half of it back. If you just want to pay for it, we'll give you the $65 back. And since you're a part of the church, you can just do it online if you want to. There's a whole way to take all of this without leaving your house. You just wouldn't be a part of the life group at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just for questions and answers.
Right. Yeah. And the beauty of coming to the life group is there's twofold to coming to the life group. One, you're hanging around other people that are trying to figure it out, which is always encouraging. But also you do have, the guy that's actually leading it is really sharp in this category. You can actually talk about your situation in particular. There's actually time at the end where if you want to stay back and go, hey, my situation is unique in this way, we have time to actually just sit down and go, well, here's what I suggest. And so you miss that if you're online because you're just taking the material in and not having that two-way conversation. So.
I'll see if I can work something.
Okay.
I went through my savings last year because of the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't have work.
Yes.
But God has blessed me with a bigger income now, and I'm trying to manage that
Sure.
income.
It's a great opportunity,
I
isn't it?
would love to be around other people who can kind of help me and stuff.
It's perfect.
I'll see if I can work something.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, and like it's about an hour and a half, so like 6:30 to 8, roughly. Some of the videos are a little bit longer than other ones, but that's the general amount of time you're going to spend. Good questions. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, as far as chipping away at debt and everything,
Uh-huh.
there's that 15% of your household income put into retirement.
Uh-huh.
Is that, you do that first before you start paying your bills and all that?
No, once you get debt-free, you mean? Like, because if you look in the
Oh, so that's
baby,
after you get-
yeah, the debts are your first priority. Because his logic is that if you've got tremendous debts, it's going to do no good to try to put 15% away for retirement because you're going to lose so much in interest that you're upside down. So yes, you go for the debts first, quickly knock those out. Then you're going to have a lot of money freed up. So the temptation is to spend it if it's freed up. Whatever. You know, something you've always wanted. But his point is that, yeah, because his point is there'll come a day where you don't want to work or cannot work anymore because you're older or you just don't want to. And if you start putting that money away now, it compounds and grows, and you have this tremendous amount of money to live on when the time comes. It's terribly sad how few people in America have any kind of retirement. Unless it used to, the companies provided that for you. You had a pension plans, what they were called. Those are almost obsolete now. I mean, mainly nobody has one, other than government employees. It's about the only people that still have it, and some school people. Yes, exactly. But the rest of us have to save it. Right. Good question, though. Anybody else? Cool. Well, thank you so much. If you have any questions at all, my email, if you want to jot it down, is john@thesimplecchurch.tv. John@thesimplecchurch.tv. Shoot me an email. I'll help you out. This Thursday night, it starts at the office, 6:30. The kits will be there. You'll leave with it if you come, and we'll take care of you from there. Is that cool? I'm going to say a quick prayer for us, and then we'll get out of here. Dear Lord, I thank you so much for the folks that are here today learning about financial peace and the folks that may be watching online. Lord, I pray that they would be able to be a part of this life group. I pray that it would be, just like for me, a great source of hope and eventual peace in their lives, Lord. I pray that you would help them overcome any hurdles that might be in the way of them taking this step. And Lord, I just pray that for each and every one of us, that you would help us make good decisions today that affect our future tomorrow so that we can live like nobody lives and give like nobody gives. We ask it in your precious name. Amen. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.